Hi everyone, it's Todd. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some story times of how I've responded to ableism. So let's just get right on into it. For those of you who don't know, ableism is discrimination towards disabled people. So it's built off of the idea that non-disabled people are superior and disabled people are inferior, and it perpetuates harmful stereotypes, attitudes, and behaviors. And every disabled person experiences ableism because the world is not built for us disabled people to be independent and have the resources that we need to live. So unfortunately, we disabled people inevitably experience ableism. Anyway, the first story that I'm going to be sharing is something that I first experienced when I was in elementary school. So I became disabled when I was 8 years old and I was in second grade. So when I went back to elementary school, things were a little different for me. And I remember being in fourth grade and one of my friends had her birthday party planned and I totally expected to be invited. But then I came to find out that she had the birthday party without inviting me, and I was really hurt because I just totally thought that I would be invited because we were friends. And somehow the topic came up and she told me that she didn't invite me because there was a piñata at the party and I could have gotten hurt, which doesn't make sense because I probably couldn't have hit the piñata myself, but I could have just sat out and watched everyone else do it and I still would have had fun. So I don't know why she thought I would have gotten hurt. I don't understand her logic there. So that was really hurtful. So this was the first time I experienced not being invited to something because of my disability. And this has happened a lot and it still happens to this day. Even as I'm 19 years old and I've been disabled for 11 years. Sometimes my friends will go do something and they know I can't do it, so they just don't ask me. And it can be really hurtful. I've had this happen when friends have birthday parties that involve ice skating because they know I can't ice skate. Or when my friends are going bowling and they assume that I can't bowl, but I actually can if I use the little ramp that they have. And even if I couldn't, I would still enjoy going to the party and just hanging out with my friends. I've also had this happen when friends are just doing anything like active really, and it's really hurtful because even if I can't participate in something, I still would love to be there and just socialize and have fun. And my friends should not be making these choices for me. So to fix this situation, I always just tell my friends something along the lines of, hey, I know that I can't participate in whatever activity it was, but I would still love to be invited because then I can make the choice of whether or not I want to attend. And I always do this because I want people to know that they shouldn't be making choices for me based on my disability because that's my choice to make. I know what I can and cannot do, and even if I can't do something, I can still have fun socializing with my friends. So I always just calmly tell them this so that they know and it doesn't happen again. And I found that this is a good solution. So that's how I respond to that form of ableism that I have experienced. I've also experienced ableism at school, and although it's rare for me, it has happened. So the first form of ableism I remember experiencing at school was when I was in fifth grade, and one of my teachers said in front of the whole class that I wouldn't be able to participate in the safety patrol position. And this was something I really wanted to do in fifth grade. I really wanted to be on the safety patrol team. So I was really embarrassed and annoyed and frustrated and sad that in front of the whole class she just said that I couldn't participate in safety patrol. Like, she just was completely assuming that I couldn't take on the role because of my disability. And I remember sitting in my desk and trying to not cry and crying in front of everyone, and it was really embarrassing. And I'm not someone who cries easily at being confronted or having a teacher talk to me or anything like that. I cry out of frustration and anger, and that's why I was crying that day, because I was so upset And I did end up taking on the safety patrol position. That all got worked out. I told my mom what had happened, and I'm pretty sure there was a meeting with some teachers and they helped figure out a way for me to participate. So that's how I handled that situation. Another situation that I had happen in school was when I was in high school. I was in 9th grade and I was taking a driver's ed class, and this was after I just had back surgery, so I couldn't wear my backpack. So I had to have a friend carry it for me to every class. And when I was walking into this class on the first day, I had this friend carrying my backpack, and she wasn't in this class. She was in a PE class that was near the driver's ed class, which is why she had carried my bag for me. And she walks in the room with my bag and helps me put it by my desk. And the instructor was standing at the front of the room, and he looked to my friend who is carrying my bag, and he said, "Oh, who are you?" And I said, "Oh, she's not in this class, she's just carrying my bag for me." And he was like, "Oh, so she's your servant." And I was shocked. He said this in front of the whole class, in front of my friend, everyone. It was so embarrassing for me and for him because that was rude. And then he didn't even stop there. He proceeded to look to the whole class and say, "Don't we all wish we could have a servant like Sarah Todd does?" I was just astounded. This was just awful. So I ended up telling my counselor what had happened, and she talked to the instructor. And then the next day in class, he apologized to me and the whole class in front of everyone. So that's how I handled that situation. Now, moving on to the next story. I've also experienced ableism in the world of dance. So I have been dancing since I was 3 years old, and I became disabled when I was 8, and I have gotten back into dancing. It's still a hobby of mine, and I really love it. And when I was around 14, I auditioned for my school's dance team. And the dance teacher, who actually knew me before I became disabled, which I think makes this even worse, she told me that they would have to put me in the back. So, meaning that since I can't move my arms completely and do the dance moves like everyone else does, they wanted me in the back so people wouldn't see me as much. And that really angered me because I am still a dancer even though I can't do the moves like everyone else can. I do them in my own way. It doesn't make me any less of a dancer. And I decided I just didn't want to be a part of that, and so I just didn't join the dance team. This next one is something that I've highlighted before, and it sounds really trivial, but it is really frustrating. And this is when I have to ask a friend to help me open a food item because I can't do it since I can't move my left hand and my right hand is really weak. And they'll say something along the lines of, "Only if I can have one," or they'll ask me if I can have one. So for example, if I have a bag of chips and I'm at lunch at school and I can't open them and I ask a friend to, they might look at me and refuse to open them until I agree to give them some of my chips. Now, this is not about me being unwilling to share. This is not about me not wanting my friends to have some of my chips because it's just a measly little chip. It is not a big deal for me to share a chip. But this is about them taking advantage of my disability. It is super rude to not open your friend's bag of chips when you know they cannot do it because of their disability unless they give you one of their chips. That's super rude. It's taking advantage of my disability, and I get so angry when this happens. So I used to just agree and say sure. But I then quickly got pretty annoyed by this, and I started just asking someone else if they refused to open my chips unless I gave them one. So that's how I handled those situations. Another form of ableism that I don't typically directly experience, but a lot of my friends who are disabled do experience, is strangers asking us questions that are often invasive. So since people who don't know me typically don't realize I have a disability, I don't experience this very much. But I've been with friends who use wheelchairs out in public, and they'll get asked questions or comments will be made about them, and I always get so frustrated when this happens because it's so rude. So one time I was at the grocery store with my friend Jen, who uses a wheelchair, and we were at the bakery section, and a worker from the bakery section noticed that Jen was wearing a leg brace and sitting in one of the scooters that they have for you to use to go around the store if you need one. And she came up to Jen and asked her what she was wearing on her leg and what happened to her leg. And Jen told her it was a long story, which is kind of signaling, I don't want to talk about it and it's none of your business, without saying those things. And the woman asked, "Is it a funny story?" And I was standing there like, are you kidding me? And Jen was like, not really. And then I'm pretty sure the woman just ended up offering us free cookies and then we left. So that was really annoying. But I made sure that when the woman was still in earshot, I turned to Jen and I said, "That was so rude. That was none of her business. She shouldn't have asked you that." Because I wanted the woman to know, like, you don't just go up to disabled people that you don't know and ask them about their disability. It's really rude. All we were trying to do was go grocery shopping. So a lot of the time I will handle situations like that in that manner. And I also did this when I was with Jen at a mall once. We were in the food court area and there was a dad with his daughter in front of us. And they somehow noticed Jen's wheelchair. And the daughter said to her dad, "Look, Dad, a wheelchair." And this girl was like at least 13 years old. So there's really no excuse there. Like, she was old enough to know that that is not an appropriate thing to do. And her dad turned around and stared right at Jen and me. And I glared back at him. Like, what? A wheelchair? For one thing, Jen is a person. She's not a wheelchair, she's a person. And pointing out someone's wheelchair is so pointless. Like, people who use wheelchairs, that's how they get around. People who walk, that's how we get around. It's nothing that needs to be pointed out. So that was just really rude and ridiculous. But yeah, when I'm with friends who are also disabled and they receive comments like that, that is typically how I react. Finally, the main form of ableism that I experience comes in the form of comments on my social media. So since I'm very open about my disability and I do a lot of disability advocacy, I receive a lot of ableist comments. And I used to reply to these comments and try to change the people's minds and get them to understand why their views were ableist. But I found that typically responding doesn't accomplish much. I think I've only changed about 2 people's minds by responding, and it just typically is very unproductive to respond. So as of very recently, I'm really trying to hold myself to this rule of blocking people who leave ableist comments and then deleting their comments without responding to them, because responding to them just doesn't seem to accomplish anything and it is not worth my time. So I'm just really trying to hold myself to that rule so that I don't waste my time and I'm not upset by what these people are saying. Because when I read ableist comments, whether they're directed towards me or another disabled person or the disability community as a whole, I just feel really sad and upset and angry, and I don't need to be feeling like that. So I'm really trying to hold myself to that rule. I am trying to only reply to the comments that are worded respectfully, where I can tell the person is genuinely interested in learning something, and those conversations typically go well. So that's how I'm handling that. Anyway, those were just some stories of how I've responded to ableism. I hope you found them interesting. Ableism is not fun, and it really stinks that we disabled people have to experience it all the time. But if you're disabled, how do you respond to ableism? I'd love to hear your stories. So comment down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, leave me a comment, hit that subscribe button, and remember to hit the notification bell so you never miss a video of mine. I post new videos every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and sometimes Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern, so I hope to see you at the next one. Also, don't forget to follow my social media, which is linked in the description box below, and check out my books and my Patreon, all of that stuff. And I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye, everyone.